The Galactic Tyrants. In a distant corner of the galaxy, the Zorgan Empire held countless star systems in its iron grip. For millennia, the Zorgans had subjugated civilizations, stripping planets of resources and enslaving entire races. Their advanced technology and merciless tactics made them an unstoppable force, feared by all who knew of their existence. At the heart of the empire was the Zorgan homeworld, a sprawling metropolis of towering spires and pulsing energy. In the Grand Palace, Emperor Zaxxor sat upon his throne, surveying the latest reports from his conquering armies. His eyes gleamed with cruel satisfaction as he read of the swift victory over the Thonians, a once proud race now reduced to mere chattel. Beside him stood his trusted advisor, Commandant Vrosk. "Another successful campaign, my lord," Vrosk said, his voice dripping with false humility. The Thonians put up little resistance. Their pitiful attempts to fight back were almost amusing. Zaxxor chuckled, a harsh sound that echoed through the cavernous throne room. As expected, no one can stand against the might of the Zorgan Empire. We will continue to expand our dominion until every corner of the galaxy bows before us. But even as the Emperor basked in his triumphs, whispers of rebellion stirred among the conquered races. On the remote planet of Eldaria, a group of rebels gathered in secret, plotting to overthrow their Zorgan overlords. Led by the charismatic Thalnian warrior Jackson, they dreamed of a day when their people would be free from the yoke of oppression. "We cannot let the Zorgans continue their reign of terror," Jackson said, his voice filled with quiet determination. "We must find a way to fight back, to show them that we will not be broken so easily." His second-in-command, a grizzled Eldarian named Torin, nodded in agreement. "But how? Their technology is far superior to ours, and their armies vastly outnumber our own. We need a miracle to even stand a chance." Jackson's eyes sparkled with a glimmer of hope. "Then perhaps it is time we seek out a miracle. I have heard tales of a distant planet called Earth, home to a race of beings known as humans. They are said to be resourceful and tenacious, with a knack for overcoming impossible odds." Torin frowned. "Humans? I've never heard of them. What makes you think they would be willing to help us?" "Call it a feeling," Jackson replied. "If the stories are true, the humans may be our best hope for victory. We must find a way to contact them, to plead our case and ask for their aid." As the rebels continued their planning, the Zorgan Empire remained blissfully unaware of the growing threat to their rule. Emperor Zaxxor and his advisors were too focused on their next conquest to notice the whispers of dissent among their subjects. Little did they know that their greatest challenge was yet to come, from a species they had never even heard of. The humans of Earth were about to enter the galactic stage, and their arrival would change the course of history forever. In the depths of space, a lone Zorgan scout ship patrolled the outer reaches of the Empire's territory. Its crew, a trio of battle-hardened warriors, scanned the surrounding stars for any signs of potential threats or new worlds to conquer. Suddenly, their sensors picked up an anomalous reading from a nearby system. It was a faint signal, unlike anything they had encountered before. Intrigued, the ship's commander ordered a closer investigation. As they approached the source of the signal, they realized it was coming from a small, unremarkable planet orbiting a yellow star. The planet's surface was a mix of blue oceans and green landmasses, with swirling white clouds dotting its atmosphere. "What is this place?" the commander muttered, studying the readouts on his display. "I've never seen a world quite like it." His subordinate, a young warrior named Zarn, spoke up. "The scans indicate a technologically advanced civilization, sir, but their technology is different. It doesn't match any known signatures in our database." The commander's eyes narrowed. "Different how?" Zarn hesitated. "It's hard to say, sir, but some of their energy readings are off the charts. We've never seen anything like it before." The commander leaned back in his chair, considering this new information. "Interesting. We must report this to the Emperor at once. If this planet holds secrets that could benefit the Empire, We must claim them for ourselves. With a nod to his crew, the commander set a course back to the Zorgan homeworld, eager to share his discovery with Emperor Zaxxor. Little did he know that this chance encounter would set in motion a chain of events that would reshape the galaxy forever. The planet the Zorgans had stumbled upon was none other than Earth, and its inhabitants, the humans, were about to face their greatest challenge yet. Humanity enters the fray. On Earth, life continued as it always had, with humans blissfully unaware of the galactic drama unfolding light years away. In the bustling city of New York, a young astrophysicist named Dr. Leela Patil was working late in her lab, studying data from a recent space probe. As she pored over the readings, something caught her eye. It was a strange energy signature, unlike anything she had seen before. Frowning, she double-checked the data, but there was no mistake. The signature was real, and it was coming from just outside the solar system. Leela's heart raced with excitement and trepidation. Could this be evidence of extraterrestrial life? She quickly compiled a report and sent it to her superiors, hoping they would share her enthusiasm for this groundbreaking discovery. Meanwhile, at the United Nations headquarters, a meeting of the Security Council was in progress. The topic of discussion was a series of mysterious attacks on satellites and space stations, which had left the international community baffled and on edge. As the delegates debated possible explanations and courses of action, a commotion erupted outside the chamber. A group of armed guards burst into the room, escorting a high-ranking military official who looked both excited and terrified. "Gentlemen, ladies," the official said, his voice trembling slightly. "We have a situation. A fleet of unknown origin has entered Earth's orbit, and they are not responding to our hails. We must assume they are hostile." The room erupted into chaos as the delegates demanded answers and called for action. But before any decisions could be made, a deafening roar filled the air, and the building shook with the force of an explosion. The Zorgan invasion had begun. In cities across the globe, massive alien ships descended from the sky, unleashing devastating energy weapons that reduced skyscrapers to rubble and sent people fleeing in terror. The Zorgan ground forces, clad in advanced battle armor and wielding high-tech weaponry, marched through the streets, rounding up survivors and crushing any resistance. But as the initial shock wore off, humanity began to fight back. In New York, Dr. Leela Patil watched in horror as the alien ships laid waste to her city. But rather than succumbing to despair, she rallied her colleagues and started working on a plan. Using her knowledge of the mysterious energy signature she had discovered, Leela and her team developed a device that could disrupt the Zorgans' advanced technology. It was a long shot, but it was the only hope they had. As the device was readied for deployment, a group of brave volunteers, led by a former Special Forces operative named Jack Reese, set out to infiltrate the Zorgan command ship and plant the device. The mission was fraught with danger, and many lives were lost, but against all odds, Jack and his team succeeded. The device activated, sending a pulse of energy that rippled through the Zorgan fleet, causing their ships and weapons to malfunction. Seizing the opportunity, Earth's military forces launched a coordinated counterattack, using a combination of conventional weapons and hastily retrofitted alien technology. The Zorgans, caught off guard by the humans' resourcefulness and determination, found themselves on the defensive for the first time in centuries. As news of the human victory spread, hope began to kindle in the hearts of the conquered races across the galaxy. If the humans could stand up to the Zorgans, perhaps there was a chance for freedom after all. On the Zorgan homeworld, Emperor Zaxxor was furious. He had underestimated the humans, dismissing them as just another primitive species to be crushed under his heel. But now, they had dealt his empire a blow that could not be ignored. "Commandant Vrosk," Zaxxor bellowed, his eyes blazing with rage. "I want those humans eliminated. Send in our most elite forces, crush them, and make an example of their pitiful world." Vrosk bowed low, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "As you command, my lord." The humans will soon learn the price of defying the Zorgan Empire. As the Zorgans regrouped and prepared for a second assault, the humans dug in, fortifying their cities and preparing for the long fight ahead. They knew that their victory had been only the beginning, and that the road to freedom would be long and bloody. But with their newfound sense of unity and purpose, they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The Terran resistance had been born, and it would not rest until the galaxy was free from the tyranny of the Zorgan Empire. The Terran resistance. In the weeks following the initial Zorgan invasion, the Terran resistance grew in strength and numbers. Across the globe, pockets of survivors banded together, sharing resources and information as they planned their next move. At the heart of the resistance was Dr. Leela Patel, whose knowledge of alien technology had proven invaluable in the fight against the Zorgans. Working tirelessly in her makeshift lab, Leela and her team developed new weapons and defenses, reverse engineering captured Zorgan equipment to level the playing field. Alongside her was Jack Reese, the grizzled Special Forces veteran who had led the daring raid on the Zorgan command ship. Jack's tactical expertise and leadership skills made him a natural choice to coordinate the Resistance's military efforts, and he took to the role with grim determination. As the Resistance gained momentum, they began to strike back against the Zorgans, using guerrilla tactics and hit-and-run attacks to keep the invaders off balance. They targeted supply lines, communication hubs, and troop transports, slowly chipping away at the Zorgans' strength. But the Zorgans were not about to give up easily. Under the command of the ruthless Commandant Vrosk, they launched a series of brutal counterattacks, targeting civilian populations in an effort to break the humans' will to fight. In one particularly devastating raid, a Zorgan death squad descended on a small town in the American Midwest, massacring hundreds of innocent people and leaving the town a smoldering ruin. Among the victims was Jack Reese's family, who had been hiding out in the town, hoping to avoid the fighting. When news of the massacre reached the Resistance, Jack was inconsolable. He had always known that the war would demand sacrifices, but losing his loved ones was a blow he hadn't been prepared for. For a moment, he teetered on the brink of despair, ready to give up the fight and succumb to his grief. But Leela refused to let him lose hope. In a quiet moment, she took him aside and reminded him of what they were fighting for. "We can't let their deaths be in vain, Jack," she said, her voice firm but compassionate. "We have to keep going, for them, and for everyone else who's counting on us." Slowly, Jack nodded, his resolve hardening. "You're right," he said. "We'll make them pay for what they've done. And we'll keep fighting until the Zorgans are nothing but a bad memory." With renewed determination, the Resistance pressed on, striking ever more daring blows against the Zorgans, and their efforts were beginning to pay off. In a major turning point, the Resistance launched a coordinated assault on a key Zorgan supply depot, using a combination of hacked alien drones and improvised explosives to devastating effect. The resulting explosion lit up the night sky for miles around, and when the smoke cleared, the depot was nothing but a smoldering crater. The loss of the depot was a significant blow to the Zorgans, who relied on a steady stream of supplies and reinforcements from their off-world bases. With their supply lines disrupted, they were forced to pull back from several key positions, giving the Resistance some much-needed breathing room. News of the victory spread like wildfire, galvanizing Resistance cells across the planet. In cities and towns, people took to the streets, celebrating the humans' triumph and daring to hope that victory might be within reach. But even as the Resistance savored its success, they knew that the fight was far from over. The Zorgans still had vast resources at their disposal, and they would not rest until the humans were crushed beneath their heel. In the depths of space, Emperor Zaxxor seethed with rage as he received reports of the humans' latest victory. "Incompetent fools," he bellowed, slamming his fist down on the arm of his throne. "How could you let a bunch of primitive apes get the better of you?" Commandant Vrosk, who had been summoned to the Emperor's presence to account for the defeat, bowed his head in submission. "Forgive me, my lord," he said, his voice trembling slightly. The humans are more resourceful than we anticipated, but I assure you, we will redouble our efforts and crush them once and for all." Zaxxer's eyes narrowed. "See that you do, Commandant. I will not tolerate any more failures. The Zorgan Empire must be seen as invincible, and these humans must be made an example of." Vrosk nodded, his face grim. "Understood, my lord. I will not rest until the humans are nothing but a memory." As Vrosk departed to carry out his orders, Zaxxer sat back on his throne, his mind churning with dark thoughts. He had underestimated the humans once, and it had cost him dearly. He would not make that mistake again. But even as he plotted his revenge, a small part of him couldn't help but feel a grudging respect for the tenacious creatures who had dared to defy him. They were a worthy adversary, and crushing them would be all the more satisfying for it. On Earth, the Terran resistance continued to fight, unaware of the storm that was gathering on the horizon. They had won a major victory, but the war was far from over. And as they would soon learn, they were not alone in their struggle against the Zorgan tyranny. An unlikely alliance. In the aftermath of the Resistance's victory at the Zorgan supply depot, something unexpected happened. A message from deep space reached Earth, carried on a frequency that had been secretly embedded in the Zorgan communications network. The message was brief but urgent, a plea for help from a group calling themselves the Galactic Rebellion. They claimed to represent a coalition of alien races who had been fighting against the Zorgan Empire for generations, and they saw humanity's success as a sign of hope. At first, the Resistance leadership was skeptical. How could they trust a message from an unknown source, especially one that had come through Zorgan channels? But as they studied the message more closely, they began to see patterns and codes that suggested it was genuine. Finally, after much debate, they decided to take a chance. Using the same frequency, they sent a reply, agreeing to a secret meeting on a neutral planet far from Earth and the Zorgan homeworld. When the day of the meeting arrived, a small delegation from the Resistance, led by Leela Patil and Jack Reese, boarded a cloaked ship and set out for the rendezvous point. They were armed and ready for anything, but nothing could have prepared them for what they found when they arrived. Waiting for them was a group of aliens unlike any they had ever seen. There were tall, spindly creatures with skin that shimmered like opals, and stocky, reptilian beings with eyes that glowed like embers. There were even a few humanoid figures, though their features were subtly different from those of Earth. At the head of the group was a figure that Leela recognized from the intelligence reports they had gathered. Jackson, the Thalnian warrior who had been one of the first to rebel against the Zorgans. "Welcome," Jackson said, his voice deep and resonant. "We have been waiting for this moment for a long time." Over the next few hours, the two groups talked and planned, sharing information and ideas. The rebels told stories of their own struggles against the Zorgans, and the Resistance members spoke of their recent victories and the challenges they still faced. In the end, they came to an agreement. The rebels would provide the Resistance with advanced technology and tactical support, while the humans would share their knowledge of Zorgan weaknesses and their experience in guerrilla warfare. Together, they would form a joint strike force, dedicated to bringing down the Zorgan Empire once and for all. As the meeting broke up, and the two groups prepared to go their separate ways, Jackson pulled Leela aside. "There is something else you should know," he said, his voice low and urgent. "We have learned that the Zorgans are planning a massive attack on Earth, bigger than anything they have attempted before. They are gathering their forces and preparing for a final, decisive strike." Leela's heart sank. She had known that the Zorgans would not take their defeat lightly, but the scale of what Jackson was describing was staggering. "How long do we have?" she asked, her mind already racing with possibilities. "Not long," Jackson replied. "A few weeks at most. We must act quickly if we are to have any chance of stopping them." Leela nodded, her jaw set with determination. "We'll be ready," she said. "And with your help, we'll make sure the Zorgans regret the day they ever set foot on Earth." As the two groups parted ways, a sense of purpose and unity filled the air. The humans and the rebels had taken the first step towards forging an alliance that could change the course of the galaxy. But they both knew that the hardest battles were still to come. On Earth, the Resistance began to prepare for the coming storm. Factories worked around the clock to churn out weapons and equipment, while engineers and scientists raced to integrate the alien technology into their own designs. In space, the rebels gathered their own forces, reaching out to cells and factions across the galaxy to build a coalition that could take on the Zorgan war machine. And on the Zorgan homeworld, Emperor Zaxxor and his advisors plotted their next move, confident in their superiority and blind to the growing threat that was gathering against them. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine the fate of the galaxy, and the humans and their new allies were determined to emerge victorious. But even as they planned and prepared, they knew that they were up against an enemy that had conquered countless worlds and crushed countless civilizations. The Zorgans were a formidable foe, and defeating them would require every ounce of courage, ingenuity, and determination that the Resistance and the rebels could muster. In the weeks to come, the Joint Strike Force would launch a series of daring raids and sabotage missions, striking at key Zorgan targets and weakening their grip on the galaxy. They would face setbacks and losses, but they would also achieve victories that would inspire hope and rally more support to their cause. And through it all, the bonds between the humans and their alien allies would grow stronger, forged in the heat of battle and tempered by shared sacrifice. They were no longer just allies, but comrades in arms, fighting for a common cause and a brighter future. The road ahead was long and fraught with danger, but for the first time in a long time, the forces of freedom had a chance to turn the tide against the Zorgan tyranny, and they were determined to make the most of it. Turning the tide. With the alliance between the Terran Resistance and the Galactic Rebellion firmly in place, the Joint Strike Force wasted no time in launching their campaign against the Zorgan Empire. Across the galaxy, hit-and-run raids and sabotage missions struck at the heart of the Zorgan war machine, targeting supply lines, communication hubs, and military installations. Leading the charge were Leela Patel and Jack Reese, who had become the de facto commanders of the human contingent. Their unorthodox tactics and innovative use of technology caught the Zorgans off guard, and their bravery and determination inspired their alien allies to new heights of courage. In one particularly daring raid, a team of human and Thalnian infiltrators managed to penetrate the defenses of a heavily guarded Zorgan research facility. There, they discovered evidence of a secret project aimed at developing a new type of weapon, one that could potentially turn the tide of the war in the Zorgans' favor. Without hesitation, the team set about sabotaging the project, planting explosives and destroying key components. As they made their escape, they were pursued by Zorgan security forces, who were determined to prevent them from escaping with the stolen data. In a desperate, last-ditch effort, Jack Reese stayed behind to hold off the pursuers, buying time for the rest of the team to escape. For several tense minutes, he fought a running battle through the corridors of the facility, using every trick and tactic he had learned in his years of fighting the Zorgans. Just when it seemed that he would be overwhelmed, a group of Eldarian rebels appeared, having received a distress call from the team. Together, they managed to fight their way out of the facility, dealing a devastating blow to the Zorgans' research efforts in the process. News of the raid spread quickly, and other rebel cells were inspired to launch their own attacks. Across the galaxy, the Zorgan Empire found itself beset on all sides, struggling to contain the growing insurgency. On the Zorgan homeworld, Emperor Zaxxor was growing increasingly desperate. His advisors were beginning to question his leadership, and there were whispers of dissent even among his most loyal followers. In a bid to regain control, Zaxxor ordered a massive counterattack, deploying his most elite troops and advanced weapons in a coordinated strike against key rebel strongholds. For a moment, it seemed that the tide might turn back in the Zorgans' favor. But the rebels were ready for them. Using intelligence gathered by their human allies, they were able to anticipate the Zorgans' moves and set up a series of ambushes and traps. In a series of lightning-fast strikes, they decimated the Zorgan forces, turning their own weapons against them and sending them retreating in disarray. The victory was a turning point in the war, and it sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. Across dozens of worlds, people who had lived under the Zorgan yoke for generations began to rise up, joining the rebel cause and taking up arms against their oppressors. Faced with a growing tide of resistance, the Zorgan Empire began to falter. Their supply lines were stretched thin, their troops were demoralized and exhausted, and their leaders were beginning to turn on each other in a desperate bid for power. In the midst of the chaos, Leela Patil and Jack Reese saw an opportunity. Working with their rebel allies, they began to plan a final decisive strike against the heart of the Zorgan Empire itself. It was a risky gambit, one that would require every ounce of courage and determination they could muster. But they knew that if they succeeded, it could mean the end of the Zorgan threat once and for all. As they made their preparations, they were joined by warriors and leaders from across the galaxy, each bringing their own strengths and skills to the table. There were engineers and scientists, spies and saboteurs, all united in their determination to bring down the Zorgan tyranny. And at the center of it all were the humans, the unlikely heroes who had started the rebellion, and who had proven time and again that they were a force to be reckoned with. As the final pieces of the plan fell into place, Leela Patil looked around at the faces of her allies, seeing the determination and hope in their eyes. She knew that the road ahead would be hard, and that many of them might not survive to see the end of it. But she also knew that they were fighting for something bigger than themselves, for a future free from the tyranny and oppression of the Zorgan Empire. And that made all the difference in the galaxy. With a final nod to her compatriots, Leela gave the order to begin the assault. And as the strike force launched itself towards the Zorgan homeworld, she knew that whatever happened, they would face it together, united in their cause and their unwavering belief in the strength and resilience of the human spirit. The final confrontation. The assault on the Zorgan homeworld began with a series of coordinated strikes, as the joint human-alien strike force launched a multi-pronged attack designed to cripple the Empire's defenses and sow chaos and confusion among its ranks. In the skies above the planet, rebel starfighters engaged the Zorgan fleet in a fierce dogfight, weaving through the enemy ships with daring precision and unleashing volleys of fire that lit up the void of space. On the ground, infiltration teams led by Jack Reese and his Thalnian counterpart, Jackson, slipped through the Zorgan defenses and made their way towards the heart of the Imperial Palace. Their objective was to capture or eliminate Emperor Zaxxor himself, to cut off the head of the Zorgan snake and send the rest of the Empire into disarray. Meanwhile, Leela Patil and her team of engineers and scientists worked to sabotage the Empire's communication and transportation networks, using a combination of hacking, sabotage, and good old-fashioned explosives to sow chaos and disrupt the Zorgan's ability to coordinate their defense. As the battle raged on, the strike force faced heavy resistance from the Zorgan military, who fought with the desperate ferocity of a cornered animal. But the humans and their alien allies were not about to back down, not when they were so close to achieving their ultimate goal. In the heart of the Imperial Palace, Jack and Jackson finally confronted Emperor Zaxxor himself. The Zorgan leader was a formidable opponent, armed with advanced weapons and shielded by a powerful force field that seemed to shrug off even the most powerful attacks. But Jack and Jackson were not about to let that stop them. Working together, they managed to lure Zaxxor into a trap, using a series of feints and distractions to draw him out of his protective bubble and into the open. In a final, desperate gambit, Jack charged forward, wielding a plasma sword that he had liberated from a fallen Zorgan warrior. With a fierce cry, he lunged at the Emperor, his blade flashing in a deadly arc. Zaxxor tried to evade the blow, but he was too slow. The plasma sword sliced through his armor like butter, and he let out a scream of agony as he fell to the ground, his lifeblood spilling out onto the polished floor of the throne room. As the Emperor lay dying, the rest of the strike force pressed their advantage. Lila and her team managed to bring down the Zorgan communication network, plunging the Empire into chaos and confusion. The rebel starfighters, bolstered by reinforcements from the Galactic Rebellion, began to push back the Zorgan fleet, forcing them to retreat from the planet's orbit. And on the ground, Jack and Jackson rallied their forces for a final push, storming the Imperial Palace and capturing or killing any Zorgan leaders who refused to surrender. It was a moment of triumph, a victory that had been hard-won and dearly bought. But even as they celebrated their success, the members of the strike force knew that their work was not yet done. The Zorgan Empire had been dealt a devastating blow, but it was not yet defeated. There were still pockets of resistance scattered throughout the galaxy, and there would be much work to be done to rebuild and restore order to the worlds that had been ravaged by the Empire's tyranny. But for now, they could take a moment to savor their victory, to honor the sacrifices of those who had fallen in the fight, and to look forward to a future free from the oppression of the Zorgan Empire. As Lila and Jack stood side by side, watching the Zorgan flag being torn down from the Imperial Palace and replaced with the banner of the Galactic Rebellion, they knew that they had been a part of something truly remarkable. They had started out as two ordinary humans, caught up in a struggle that had seemed far beyond their abilities to influence. But through their courage, their determination, and their unwavering belief in the power of the human spirit, they had helped to change the course of an entire galaxy. And as they looked out over the cheering crowds of rebels and freed slaves, they knew that their story was far from over. There would be new challenges to face, new threats to confront, and new allies to be made. But they would face them together, united in their cause and their unshakable conviction that no matter how vast and powerful the forces arrayed against them might seem, there was nothing in the universe that could stand against the combined strength and resilience of the human race. With a final nod to each other, Lila and Jack turned to face the future, ready to embrace whatever challenges and opportunities it might bring. And as they did so, they knew that they were not alone, that they were part of something greater than themselves, a legacy of courage and hope that would endure long after they were gone. A new era. In the weeks and months following the fall of the Zorgan Empire, the galaxy underwent a profound transformation. With the tyrannical regime that had held sway for so long finally vanquished, the once subjugated races of the cosmos found themselves facing a new and unfamiliar reality, one in which they were free to chart their own destinies. For the members of the Terran Resistance and the Galactic Rebellion, the work of rebuilding and restoration had only just begun. Across countless worlds, the scars of the Zorgan occupation ran deep, and it would take time, effort, and cooperation to heal the wounds of the past and build a brighter future. But they were not daunted by the task that lay ahead. United by their shared experiences and the bonds of friendship and camaraderie that had been forged in the heat of battle, the humans and their alien allies set about the work of reconstruction with a sense of purpose and determination. On Earth, Leela Patel and her team of scientists and engineers worked tirelessly to adapt and integrate the advanced technologies they had acquired during the war, using them to rebuild and improve the planet's infrastructure and defenses. At the same time, they shared their knowledge and expertise with their alien counterparts, helping to spur a new era of innovation and discovery across the galaxy. Meanwhile, Jack Reese and his fellow soldiers took on the task of training and equipping a new generation of peacekeepers and defenders, drawn from the ranks of the Terran Resistance and the Galactic Rebellion. Together, they worked to maintain order and stability in the far-flung reaches of the cosmos, ensuring that the hard-won peace they had achieved would endure. As the months turned into years, the influence and reputation of Earth and its people continued to grow. The planet became known as a beacon of hope and progress, a shining example of what could be achieved through unity, determination, and the indomitable human spirit. And at the heart of it all were Leela and Jack, the unlikely heroes who had started it all. Though they had never sought fame or glory for themselves, they found themselves regarded as symbols of the new era that was dawning, living embodiments of the ideals and values that had brought the galaxy together. For Leela, it was a source of both pride and humility. She knew that the achievements of the Terran resistance and the Galactic rebellion were the result of the efforts and sacrifices of countless individuals, each of whom had played their part in the great drama that had unfolded. But she also knew that none of it would have been possible without the courage and determination of the human race, the species that had dared to stand up against the might of the Zorgan Empire and had emerged victorious. As for Jack, he found a new sense of purpose in his role as a mentor and guide to the next generation of defenders. He knew that the peace they had won was a fragile thing, and that there would always be those who sought to threaten or destroy it. But he also knew that as long as there were people like him and Leela, people who were willing to stand up and fight for what was right, the galaxy would never again fall under the sway of tyranny and oppression. And so, as the years passed, and the galaxy continued to change and evolve, Leela and Jack remained at the forefront of the great adventure that had begun with their first fateful encounter with the Zorgan Empire. They faced new challenges and new adversaries, but they did so with the same unwavering courage and determination that had carried them through their darkest hours. And through it all, they never forgot the lessons they had learned or the bonds they had forged. They knew that the strength of the human spirit lay not in its ability to dominate or conquer, but in its capacity for empathy, compassion, and unity. And they knew that as long as those values endured, there was no force in the universe that could stand against them. As they looked out across the stars, Leela and Jack knew that the future was bright and full of promise. The Zorgan Empire was gone, and in its place, a new era of peace, cooperation, and discovery was dawning. And at the center of it all, the people of Earth stood tall and proud, a shining beacon of hope and inspiration for all the peoples of the galaxy. With a smile and a nod to each other, Leela and Jack turned their faces to the future, ready to embrace whatever wonders and challenges it might hold. For they knew that no matter what lay ahead, they would face it together, bound by the unbreakable bonds of friendship, love, and the enduring spirit of humanity. And as the stars wheeled overhead and the galaxy spun on into the infinite depths of space, they knew that theirs was a story that would be told for generations to come, a story of courage, sacrifice, and the indomitable power of the human spirit.